Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into how historians uncover the hidden and, often really surprising stories behind historical conflicts. It's all about looking past the obvious, peeling back the layers of the stories we think we know to find out what was really going on. Okay, so to get us started, let's dive right in with this amazing paradox from World War I. This quote, it's about a Salvation Army chaplain, a guy named William Mackenzie, but everyone knew him as Fighting Mac. And just listen to that description. He was basically everything the classic Australian soldier, the digger, was supposed to hate. I mean, think about it. On one side, you've got the popular image of the Anzac digger, right? Known for booze, betting, bad language, the whole shebang. And on the other side, you've got Fighting Mac, a man who preached evangelism, sobriety, and clean living. He was actively railing against every single one of the vices these soldiers were famous for. You'd think he'd be the most unpopular man on the entire Western Front. But he wasn't. Not even close. In fact, the complete opposite happened. The soldiers didn't just put up with him, they absolutely worshipped him. He became this huge legend, a folk hero. And get this, he was even called the man who best represented the Anzac ideal. So, how on earth does that happen? This massive contradiction, it just forces us to ask a really important question. How does a man who stands against everything a culture supposedly is become its greatest icon? And the answer, well, it tells us a whole lot about how we understand the past. The story of Fighting Mac is the perfect way in because it shows us something really fundamental. That popular shorthand version of history we all carry around, the stereotypes, is often just way too simple. It smooths over all the interesting bumps and contradictions. And that brings us to the real heart of our topic today, which is inspired by the work of some amazing historians. How do we get a truer, more complex picture of the past? To answer that, we're going to dive into some of the research presented at the Australian Historical Association's Conflict in History Conference. What these historians are showing us brilliantly is that to really understand conflict, you have to look far beyond the battlefield. Sometimes you got to look in the most unexpected places. For example, think about the economic tug-of-war between movie theaters and the rise of video stores back in the 80s. Now, that wasn't a war with soldiers and tanks, but it was absolutely a fierce battle, a conflict for our attention and our wallets that completely changed how we entertain ourselves and even what our towns looked like. Or how about this? Historians are uncovering these incredibly intense social and political conflicts just by studying the lives of the first female Korean communists. I mean, these were women who defied every single rule of their time, trying to navigate a world that was labeling them as patriots, traitors, feminists, and seductresses, all at the same time. And then there's the deep cultural conflict within people. For instance, male settlers in frontier Queensland, men who could be just brutally violent towards Indigenous people, but who are also drawn to these incredibly sentimental cultural stories, like the folktale of the dying stockman. It's another one of those head-scratching contradictions, just like Fighting Mac. So, what this all points to is something absolutely crucial. If you want a fuller, realer picture of the past, you have to actively look for the people who've been left out of the main story. It's all about finding those forgotten voices and hidden histories. And what's so cool about this is the commitment to finding the stories of people on the margins. Historians are digging up the experiences of people like the Aboriginal Anzacs, whose incredible service was just ignored for decades, or Italian Australians who were locked up in internment camps during the war, or the really traumatic stories of young girls sent over from Britain as child migrants. Every single one of these forgotten voices adds another crucial, complex layer that just shatters that simple, one-size-fits-all version of history. But here's the thing, the conflict doesn't actually stop when the event is over. Historians also look at how the memory of a conflict becomes its own battleground, with different groups fighting over how things should be remembered, long after the dust is settled. A really powerful example of this is the whole controversy over Agent Orange. So back in 2012, the Australian War Memorial puts out its official history of the Vietnam War. But the veterans, the guys who actually suffered from being exposed to this chemical, they call the official account wildly insulting and launched a petition to get it rewritten. That's a direct clash right there between the official story and lived experience, a real battle over memory. And oh man, the Eureka flag is a perfect example of this ongoing fight. From the moment it first showed up in 1854 with miners fighting for their rights, it's been a site of constant conflict. Over the decades, it's been claimed by everybody from trade unionists to political activists, and the battle over what it means is still going on.
Even the recent decision to just move the physical flag from one museum to another sparked a whole new debate over who truly owns its story.
So when you see all this, it becomes pretty clear, right? History isn't this static thing. It's not just a collection of facts set in stone that you memorize from a textbook one time and you're done. No, it's this living, breathing process of investigation. It all starts when you find a contradiction, a puzzle piece like Fighting Mac that just doesn't fit the neat story. That makes you ask a whole bunch of new questions. Then you go looking for those unheard voices in old archives and letters and people's memories. And when you piece all of that new information together, you reshape the story, and you end up with a richer, more complex, and yeah, a more truthful understanding of what actually happened. So, understanding conflict in history really means looking for exactly that, the complexity, the contradictions, and all the hidden human stories that make up the real past. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. What accepted story, what simple narrative that we all think we know, really needs a closer look?